1888, a killer walked the dark streets of London's East End. He sent taunting letters to police. He was never caught. He was never identified. Over 100 years later, the greatest detectives in the world still cannot agree on who he was. This is the true story of Jack the Ripper, the most famous unsolved case in criminal history. The year was 1888. London was the largest city on earth. 6 million people lived there. But in the East End district of Whitechapel, life was desperate and brutal. Thousands of people were crammed into tiny, overcrowded slums. Poverty was everywhere. Disease was rampant. The streets were dark and dangerous at night. Gas lamps cast weak yellow light on narrow cobblestone alleyways. Thick fog rolled in from the Thames River most evenings. It was in these dark streets that the killer chose to hunt. August 31st, 1888. 3:40 a.m. A cart driver named Charles Cross was walking to work through Bucks Row, a dark, narrow street in Whitechapel. He noticed what he thought was a bundle of tarpaulin lying in a gateway. He went closer to look. It was a woman. Her name was Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly. She was 43 years old. She had been killed with extreme violence. Police were called immediately. Inspector John Spratling arrived and noted the severity of the attack. Polly Nichols was the first confirmed victim of Jack the Ripper. September 8th, 1888. Just 1 week after Polly Nichols, another woman was found. Annie Chapman, 47 years old, was discovered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street, Whitechapel. She had been killed in the same manner as Polly Nichols, but with even more violence. The killer had taken time in that dark yard. He was not rushed. He was not afraid. He worked with a terrible calmness and precision. The entire Whitechapel community was now gripped with terror. Police had no leads whatsoever. September 27th, 1888. The Central News Agency in London received a letter. It was written in red ink. It began with the words, "Dear Boss." The writer mocked the police. He said he was down on certain women and would not stop until he was caught. He signed the letter, Jack the Ripper. This was the first time that name appeared. Police initially believed the letter was a hoax from a journalist, but when the next attack came, they were no longer so certain. September 30th, 1888. In a single night, Jack the Ripper attacked twice. The first victim was Elizabeth Stride, 44 years old, found in Dutfield's yard off Burner Street. She had been killed, but the killer appeared to have been interrupted. He was not finished. Less than 1 hour later, Catherine Eddowes, 46 years old, was found in Mitre Square in the City of London. This time, the killer had not been interrupted. A piece of Catherine's apron was found in a doorway nearby. Above it, written in chalk on the wall, were the words that would become one of the most debated messages in criminal history. The chalk message found above Catherine Eddowes' apron piece read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren ordered the message erased before it could be photographed, fearing it would cause anti-Jewish riots in the East End. This decision has been criticized by investigators ever since. The message, whatever it meant, was the only writing ever found at a Ripper crime scene, and it was destroyed before it could be properly examined. October 16th, 1888. George Lusk, chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, received a small cardboard box in the mail. Inside was half of a preserved human kidney and a letter. The letter began with the words, "From hell." The writer claimed the kidney had come from one of his victims. He said he fried and ate the other half. A doctor examined the kidney and determined it had come from a woman of approximately 45 years old, consistent with Catherine Eddowes, and showed signs of Bright's disease, a condition Eddowes was known to have suffered from. This letter, unlike the Dear Boss letter, is believed by many researchers to be genuine. November 9th, 1888. Mary Jane Kelly, 25 years old, was the youngest of the Ripper's victims. She was found in her own room at 13 Miller's Court, Dorset Street. Unlike the previous victims, who were attacked outdoors, Mary Jane Kelly was killed inside. The killer had hours alone with her in that room. The scene discovered by police was the most severe of all the attacks. Constable Walter Dew, who later became famous for catching another criminal, said he had nightmares about what he saw in that room for the rest of his life. After Mary Jane Kelly, the Ripper attacks stopped completely. The Metropolitan Police investigation into the Whitechapel murders was the largest in London's history. Detective Inspector Frederick Aberline led the ground investigation. Over 2,000 people were interviewed. Over 300 people were investigated as suspects. 76 butchers and slaughtermen were checked because of the apparent surgical knowledge shown in the attacks. Police conducted house-to-house searches across the entire Whitechapel area. Plain-clothes officers patrolled the streets. Despite all of this, the killer was never identified. He simply vanished as completely as he had appeared. Over the past 130 years, hundreds of suspects have been proposed. The most discussed include Montague John Druitt, a barrister whose body was found in the Thames in December 1888. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish barber who lived in Whitechapel. Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria, though this theory has been largely discredited. Francis Tumblety, an American quack doctor who fled to America after the murders ended. None of these suspects was ever charged. None was ever proven to be the Ripper. In 2014, businessman Russell Edwards purchased a shawl at auction that had allegedly been found near the body of Catherine Eddowes in 1888. He commissioned DNA expert Dr. Jari Luhalainen to analyze the shawl. Using mitochondrial DNA testing, the results appeared to link DNA on the shawl to descendants of both Catherine Eddowes and Aaron Kosminski. Edwards declared the case solved, claiming Kosminski was Jack the Ripper. However, other scientists heavily criticized the methodology of the DNA analysis. The results remain disputed and controversial in the scientific community. Criminologists have long debated why Jack the Ripper was never caught. Several factors made his capture extremely difficult. Forensic science in 1888 was in its infancy. There were no fingerprints, no DNA testing, no CCTV cameras. The dark fog-covered streets of Whitechapel made witnesses unreliable. The killer chose victims who were already marginalized by society. Police communication between the Metropolitan Police and City Police was poor. They did not share information effectively. And the killer, whoever he was, simply stopped. Which is the most puzzling fact of all. Jack the Ripper's legacy has endured for over 130 years. The case inspired the entire genre of detective fiction. It led directly to reforms in how London police investigated serious crimes. It changed how newspapers reported on criminal cases. Whitechapel, where the crimes occurred, now has a famous walking tour visited by thousands of tourists every year. Over 100 books have been written, naming over 500 different suspects. The case has inspired countless films, television programs, and novels. No other unsolved case in history has generated more investigation or more fascination than these 5 murders in 1888. Here is the truth that haunts every researcher who has ever studied this case. Jack the Ripper killed 5 women in the space of 10 weeks. He sent letters mocking the police. He operated in one of the most densely populated areas on Earth. He was seen by witnesses on multiple occasions. And yet, despite all of this, he was never caught, never identified, never brought to justice. He killed 5 women in their prime, destroyed 5 families, terrorized an entire city, and then simply disappeared, back into the dark, foggy streets of Victorian London, as if he had never existed at all. Some mysteries are never solved. Some shadows never reveal their secrets. Subscribe to The Hidden Truth for more real stories that will leave you speechless. New story every week. The truth is always hidden. We find it.